investment. Goat farming is about a strategic plan. So it's not something that you can say, let me get like 100,000 today from a friend, and then in the next 2 months to 3 months you'll be able to refund the cash. So even before starting the goat project, it is wise to first of all do the feasibility study. So on the feasibility study is you are looking at two factors. One, where are you going to set up the goat farm? So the location of the goat farm will inform various factors. So for instance, if you're an urban farmer, the previous guys were asking about someone's on a 40 by 80 or a 50 by 100 plot. So such factors will determine what will be a strategic plan when it comes to the planning stage. So for instance, if you're a guy with several acres, so the best ideal approach will be to consider sort of like free range. That's something which can be able to assist you in your operational costs. So when you figure out that what type of breeding you want to do. So for instance, we have the dairy industry and then we have the meat industry. So for someone in an urban setting, you'll realize that there's several regulations and controls that from the county government in terms of controlling the number of livestock that you can have in an urban setting. So you realize that having meat goats might be a little bit problematic because of the operational costs as well as to the number of goats that you can put in that given structure. So for me, I'll say if you have some idle land, let's say you're having like, let's say 10 acres, 12 acres, 5 acres, you have a relative or you have a friend who has huge tracts of land and is not using. So probably that one you can, if you're into meat breeds, then you might consider visiting the farm. So before even engaging the farm, you can't, it's not advisable to take a land that the bush has been cleared. So that one might not be quite ideal for you if you're looking at low cost of production at the initial stage. So one, when you're doing the planning aspect, so one, you have to identify the breeding niche that you're getting in. So in that case, one, if you are doing for meat or doing for dairy, then the second part is you do your market survey. So on market survey, you're trying to check in my area. Let's say I'm in Kiambu. So what is it feasible for me to do dairy goat in that area? That is one. So part of your market research requires some physical market survey. So you cannot just Google and then you say I want to be a breeder. I've seen several guys online doing breeding and it appears as if they're making good money. So as a breeder, personally, I engage by visiting the markets as well. So the Soko days, I visit it and see what is how much is the current pricing going for meat. Despite being a breeder, there are certain animals that do not reach the breeding standard, so which we cull them. So the culling is we remove them from the breeding system where we just put them separately for meat purposes. So that aspect of market survey is crucial before even putting your money to goat farming. So the second aspect is, that's the third aspect. So the third aspect is on researching on the veterinary services available close to you. So when you're looking at the veterinary available close to you is an issue of troubleshooting. So you don't want to get in a situation whereby it's like you don't have the 911, the emergency call for in case of an emergency. So you realize that if I invest in goats, what is my risk management plan? So your risk management plan is also having a vet on call. So you realize the vets themselves also, they're just like any other profession, they might be engaged elsewhere. So my take, for me, I usually say if you're going to start goat farming, you must have at least on bare minimum three phone calls. So the three contacts of the vets are, in case vet A is not available, then vet B. If vet B is not available, vet C. So that's the, like we call it the first line of defense. So that's the first line of defense. So the second line of defense is to be able to know what are the common diseases in your area. So that's where the vet comes in. So once, yes, Aizo, I'll talk about the vaccination. Thank you. So the moment you can be able to understand that this particular area, there are certain diseases that they are prone with that area. So for instance, if you're stocking from northeastern, the northern area has issues of enterotoxemia because of the water as well as the pasture. So the difference in the pastures area. So you realize that where you are sourcing your livestock from might determine which areas of risk management you're supposed to put in place. So having a qualified vet to advise you on the right structure with regards to vaccination and the scheduling of the vaccination. So for instance, Aizo has asked about the vaccination schedule. So you realize that that's where the veterinary, having done the mapping of the veterinary, then the vet is the one who discusses with you and tells you if you're sourcing goats from a certain area, the following are the various diseases. So you realize that if you're sourcing from Taveta, for instance, you realize that there are instances of foot and mouth diseases. So you cannot ignore and say, in my area, we only vaccinate on PPR and CCPP for pneumonia. So you might, that's an area whereby it's better to spend money on a professional vet, rather than doing guesswork. So you realize that the fifth point will be on the vaccination schedule. So the vaccination schedule is the second line of defense after the first line being the vet himself. So on vaccination, even before speaking on vaccination, there are basic troubleshooting techniques at the farm. So you might be in a situation where all the vets cannot be found. So your technical staff, let's say whether the manager or the shepherd, so they need also to be subjected to some training, supervised by the vet, for basic treatments that require antibiotics or first aid. So that's again another point that has really helped us in terms of managing our goat risks at the farm. So sometimes with coordination of the vet, you realize that it becomes easier to troubleshoot certain illness. Personally, I'm not a vet, but there are certain symptoms based on experience and with consultations of the vet, we have been able to avert certain calamities at the farm. So on vaccination, this is this is like the foundation of everything. So goats that have not been vaccinated are a timing bomb. So you realize that's why everyone is afraid whenever you say that these goats are coming from the northern side. You realize that that side, the vaccination programs have not been. There's no clear watertight vaccination from that side. However, based on my interactions with some learned guys from that region, we realize that there's an ongoing NGO set up for purposes of training the nomads from the northeastern side concerning vaccination, breeding. So that's something which will go in a longer, it's like a long shot in terms of managing the risks. So when I talk about vaccination, you realize that there are certain common vaccinations that must be administered to goats. So you realize that, for instance, in Kenya, pneumonia, the one for CCPP, is quite prevalent, and that illness can take your goat within the next 2 hours or 4 hours, depending with your risk mitigation at the farm. So having the knowledge of which vaccinations to administer is quite important. So I'll just give a disclaimer that copy pasting is quite dangerous, because me as goat master, I might be vaccinating against bacterial infection or diseases in my area. Then on your end, without the guidance of a vet, you are equally just saying that because goat master has today vaccinated enterotoxemia, then I must also administer it to my flock. So it's always good to understand that whenever the vet comes to your farm, don't have the mentality of me, I'm not a vet, so I've engaged a professional vet, and then you just leave everything to your vet. The risk that stands with that is that, as I told you, you must have at least 3 backup vets. So if vet A is not available, and vet A is the champion of your records, whereby he's the only one who knows what type of vaccination he administered, which date he administered. So that is the greatest challenge that you can ever have. So I remember when I was beginning goat farming, I had not done the mapping for the vet. So as a Maasai, having livestock is like a basic, it's just like a basic program. So we are raised with goats and livestock. However, with the climate change and all the disruptive diseases, at the moment you cannot just raise goats by themselves and saying, hey, these goats these are local goats, so they can't have diseases. So the unfortunate bit is that some of the diseases are airborne. So rule number 5 is that you must always continue researching, especially for guys who are impressed with the Boer breed. The Boer breed is an impressive breed based on its carcass maturity and its conversion rate. However, it is another expensive affair. If not well managed, you can also incur losses. So, like for me personally, in my first lot of importation, I happened to rely heavily on Google. That was in 2020 November, whereby I saw the Boer breeds Toby Kage. All right, so you realize that internet has everything, yeah, and everything means you have to do filtration. So as someone who used to have the Maasai goats, which are the local goats, it was something that I was looking towards improving the breeds based on the internet research. So if you Google any place, you will realize that the Boer goat is the Boer, Savannah, and Red Kalahari have great ratings, especially on its survival and free range. So one thing I will say is that if you're planning to get those top genetics, the super breeds, don't attempt to import a goat if you have never raised even a single local goat. So that's the greatest mistake, whereby someone says, I'm going to retire in 5 months. So I've talked to several guys, and I remember there's a friend of mine whose father is retiring in the next 5 years. So the daughter explained to the father that I do goat breeding, and the father was of the impression that he has everything under control. So then I just asked the daughter about the planning. So you realize that majority of the people want to do goat farming as a retirement plan. So the only sad part is profits in goat farming is not like the tropical rain, whereby you just wait in the morning, you buy goats today, and miraculously in the morning you have an entire flock of 1,000 or 100, 200 flock. You search on the various YouTube channels, and you're impressed with how people are having big numbers. So I'll say that's another greatest. The greatest risk is investing in something that you don't have any knowledge about it. So that's the challenge towards the foreign breeds. So I remember I did the importation because I was looking towards having some genetics that are faster in terms of maturity. So unfortunately, the importation went smooth, and I had not realized that there are some certain risks attached to the flock while in motion, because they are usually put in a crate together with other animals. Unfortunately, some vets do not have the same professional standards, and also there are certain diseases that the vets themselves cannot be able to note. Just the same way, just like a human being, you can travel today knowing that you're okay, but tomorrow morning you wake up, you feel like your voice is husky, and you're feeling headache and all that other stuff. So I will say that, one, Boer goats are the best, and red Kalaharis are well, depending with preference, and Savannah. So for me, I'm a huge fan of Boers and Savannahs because of their conversion rate, Savannahs for their adaptability. So when you're sourcing the animal, you need to liaise with whoever is importing for you based on your program. So if you're going to import an animal and that animal is going to be on free range, discuss with your importer as well as the breeder that you are interested in a breed that is adaptable to free range. Unfortunately, some of these goats they have huge carcass, 100 kgs, 90 to 105 kgs, but they are on zero grazing. So when you get them, they look very sexy upon arrival. However, not knowing what regime of feeding the animal was sourced is another great risk. Reason being, based on your Googling, you realize that Boers are hardy. So that's what you'll get on Google. That Boer goats are hardy animals, and they mature faster, all those positive things. However, just like anything, if you're importing a top genetics from a foreign land, you are not buying a goat to test its hardiness. You're buying that goat, which is quite expensive. You realize that getting that Boer back is roughly from $1,200 to $1,300. And that's not small investment. So you realize that for you to be able to delve into that niche, first, you must be able to understand what feeds am I supposed to plan for them. So you realize that in South Africa, mostly they're fed on Lucerne. They're fed on Lucerne as well as to Boma rods and some elephant grass, depending with the breeders. So doing your research upfront, that is one. Doing attending trainings, not just virtually, because farming is a hands-on deck. It's a hands-on deck experience. So as much as you are undertaking the training, at least take a positive step of also having those goats. So you can take, let's say, for me, I usually ask someone says, hi, I'm looking towards getting a Boer back, a Boer male to improve my breeds. I've seen that. Those goats they look nice. So some even don't know the name of the goat, so which means they have not even done their research about the goat itself. So that's the starting point, whereby it's not an issue of sales, but it's more of an issue of informing someone about the breed rather than the person buying the goat without a manual. So it's the manual part is where I usually advise most guys who are delving into goat farming to first begin by having at least one, you either pick the local goats, or two, you at least pick the Somali goats, the Gala goats. So in most cases, the Gala goats don't have a lot of complication in terms of acclimatization, because already those goats are readily available in the market. So go by the animals. If you're starting out, go with animals that are available locally. So that is like the first. You must have a short term and a long term short. So the long term is having the boas. So now, why should you begin with the basic, with the locally available goats? One, depending with where you have sourced. So if you source from a breeder meaning there's a difference between a farmer and a breeder. So a farmer is just someone keeping goats and at given time just for pride. I remember there's a guy who visited my farm and said, I have for him he said that you have a nice kichaka, the bush. However, that you have very few goats for such very nice very nice shrubs, and the landscape and everything is fit for a lot of goats. So a farmer will deal with a lot of goats, but a breeder will deal with quality goats. So when I say quality goats, we are looking at goats that can mature faster. They have good conversion rate. So currently in the market, that's why I say the local goats are equally good. The local East African goats, they are equally good. However, they have a slow rate of maturity. That is one. So which means if you're taking the route of getting the local females, you are better off taking the ones which are at least 2 years old for the local goats. Reason being, there's no farmer who is getting, there's no breeder who is getting into the market to make losses, or just to have some fanciful selfies and good wallpapers on your phone. So you're looking, if you're strategic, you're looking towards one, you're passionate. Yes, you love those, you love the goats, but two, there must be some sustainable aspect of the farming you're doing. So that's why if you're taking the route of the local goats as, let's say, a pilot project, so take the local, you can take like even 10 females, local goats. Then now you get a good male. So when I say a good male, because you are starting out, you need to manage your risks. So managing the risk mean you get another local improved breed like Gala goat, the Somali, some call it Somali breed. Because it originates from Somalia. So you realize that the moment you pick those 10 animals, the 10 local East African goats, I'm using a Kenyan setting. If it's in Uganda, then you get the Mubende goats. They call them the Mubende goats. So you begin with what is available in your country. So once you get those 10, then you get that one male. So if you want an improved genetic as a starter, you do the local East African. Those ones will not be very expensive to acquire. Then the Gala goat, you realize that the male one for breeding, at least it should be from 12 months. But most ideally, the one for breeding from 15 months. That's like an ideal age for purposes of breeding for the Gala one. So you must be able to know. If you don't know, at least you must be able to have someone who knows what are the various characteristics of a good breeding Gala male. So that male, you realize that for Galas, they are quite unique. Their scrotal area most usually is split into two. So that's another way of checking the various, we call them the genotypes. So we have the genotype and we have the phenotypes. The phenotypes is just by looking at the physical characters of the goat. So if a goat is, let's say, white, pure white, so you realize that Savannah and Galas are equally white. But from the body frame, you can be able to see that this one is a Gala and this one is a Savannah, just from looking at, even without going to the genetics and the records from the farm perspective of the breeder. So someone cannot, it is quite difficult for someone to tell you. I tell you that this one is a Boer goat, and yet the animal itself does not have any trait of a Boer breed. So when you're stocking, ensure you at least even get a veteran who knows the traits of a good buck. And secondly, if possible, to get referral to a certain farm that it can be referral, or two, it can be a community. So it can be another breeder who you have been checking him out and seeing the way. It's an informative angle. So for me, I always say information is key, but sometimes the key gets lost. So if you call a breeder and the breeder cannot be able to explain to you, let's say at what range that animal was born, then that becomes a challenge, because that one means definitely he's not keeping his records, his records. So that one, he fails the test as a breeder, because without keeping the records, how sure is how will you know the person probably keeps records? So the first line of analysis is where you check if you get into a farm and all the goats don't have a tag. The tag, it's like an earring. It's like an earring. So if you get to a farm and the farm itself, no single goats. Someone has, like, let's say 100, 200 goats, but all the goats, there is no single tag. So the tag is just ear tag. The ear tag is an identification aspect. That is one. Two, it's a risk mitigation aspect. Because without you tagging that goat, you cannot be able to know, one, which animal is productive. So you realize that as a breeder, you don't want to retain a goat that is always doing miscarriages. So if goat A, tag number 1, has miscarried in the first in the first quarter, first breeding quarter, it has miscarried. Again, it goes again to the next the next session, it miscarriages. So without you be able to track the records, you cannot know which ones are your productive animals and which ones are not productive. So through tracking using the ear tag, you can be able to know that tag number 17 from the last 2 breeding cycles has been having miscarriages or stilt births. So from that one, you can be able to say that tag number 17 needs to be culled. So meaning this one is not even fit to sell to another fellow farmer. So this one needs only to be sold to someone who is buying for meat. Reason being, as a breeder, you first you first question yourself that you cannot sell anything that you cannot buy it yourself. So the unfortunate bit is that when people resort to going to the market to buy the goats, the local market to buy the goats, you say, I spoke to breeder A, B, and C. They're very expensive, but if I go to my local, local market, I'll be able to get it. It's very cheap, even 5,000, 5,600. So from that one, the person sees he's doing cost is trying to manage his cost of operation. Unfortunately, based on experience, the guys who sell from the market, if they are not selling for meat, it's not advisable to buy for breeds from the market. Reason being, this person might be having, the goat might be having challenges. For instance, some challenges that cannot be detected from the human eye. For instance, in Maasai, we have a certain, we call it a certain disease, which is Ormilo. It's like mbuzi yenye kichwa imeharibika. So it's like a mad goat. But you realize that at certain times the goat is okay, at certain times the goat is losing network. So when you go to the market, it's based on physical appearance rather than a breeder. So when a breeder you have a bigger pool, that is one. You have a bigger pool to choose from. So if the breeder has several goats, you can be able to go with even your vet. So once you go with your vet, if you're not knowledgeable, there's no crime in spending a little more coins and getting quality. So whereby they can do the rectal temperature, for instance, to check if the animal is sick, because there are certain reasonable temperatures for the normal temperatures for a normal healthy goat. So with those specs, you'll be happy and you flock. You storm the market and get an entire 50 goats, and you say, voila, now I've started the goat journey. Not knowing, you don't know what kind of calamity you might bring into your stock. So unfortunately, if for instance in your area you don't have any reputable supplier and you're starting out, so when you're starting out, you must ensure that the cost of production is low, which means in case anything goes south, you'll not be able to be put on drip in hospital, because you'll say, hey, this one was just a pilot. I'm trying to check with these 5 to 10 goats. So with that one, you can still be able to source from the market with a disclaimer that, one, ensure that if you have other livestock on the farm, ensure you don't mix with them when you buy them. Then don't buy 1 goat per time. It's better to buy 10 goats at a go. Why? If you buy a goat, 1 goat this market day, then the next market day you buy another one, you realize that your cost of production will be quite high. Reason being, the various vaccines for the animals range between 50 doses and 100 doses. So if for me,